Right, so we should be live. Welcome to the show. It's obviously Saturday Night Live. I'm going to be hosting today, which is a bit of a change with Barry on the show in particular. We're going to be talking about just the Arsenal game, the fallout from the Arsenal game, obviously the biggest fallout from the Arsenal game, which is Sancho, and just anything else that we can come up with on the day at the time. So first, obviously, let's get started with the fact we lost. It's not very good. Still, we'll start with you, mate. What did you make of the game? Any glaring issues for you in the game?
Look, I thought we played all right. The fans went into meltdown as usual. Look, there are certain games. If you don't take your chances in football, you don't win games. And I often talk about one strike, one goal, and that's what appeared to happen with the Rashford effort. We were under the cosh. We had one attempt on goal, and it goes in, and that's how it should be. Our defending after that was called into question with their equaliser, and 2 or 3 minutes after, and then it doesn't really set you. It gives you a bit of a problem, and so some would argue we were lucky to get in at half time at one apiece. I disagree. I don't think we were. I don't think Arsenal were particularly good at all, and I think there are certain areas of the pitch where we made them look good. Saka, for example, hardly was in the game. I was worried about what Dalot would bring to the team at left back. As it proved, he was excellent against Saka. He still went missing. Still couldn't remember that he was playing left back and appeared on the right side on more than one occasion. He took the inverted fullback into a completely different level, playing as a number 10 at times. But he did very, very well. I thought Wan-Bissaka was excellent. There was signs of improvement in the middle of the park with Eriksen, Casemiro and Bruno. But again, Bruno really was anonymous for 90% of the game. And I thought the plus points were Højlund coming on board. I thought he looked quite good when he came on. You could argue the Garnacho goal was a goal. It wasn't offside. But, you could argue that till the cows come home. My question is, why did they get it wrong? It's not anything about VAR. It's why did you get it wrong? That's what I would like to know. Nobody's answered that question. Everybody's having a pop at it, but nobody's really asked why they got it wrong. And I think that needs to be asked, and we need to know. And I think, the Højlund assault in the box by Gabriel, that was a very, very straightforward and easy one. So all in all, I'm not too bad. I think we're similar points, aren't we, to what we achieved this time last season.
I think it's the same, yeah.
Yeah, we went on to have a good game. We've got major issues now, haven't we, with injuries, obviously. And people were getting meltdown, weren't they? Oh, no, Amrabat's come back from Morocco. Oh, for God's sake, get a life.
I was definitely one of those in meltdown, by the way.
He's got a minor niggle. This is what it is in football. This is what football's about, and this is why you have squads of players. And we're going to have a tough match Sunday. Is it a week on Sunday?
Yeah, week on Sunday, I believe, yeah.
We'll have a tough match a week on Sunday. But at the end of the day, you've got to brush yourself down and get on with it. So not too bothered, really. I thought it was okay. I was disappointed with the first 25 minutes. So-called connoisseurs of the game were trying to suggest that Onana was trying to take the sting out of Arsenal's game. I didn't buy that at all. You don't get anywhere when you're passing backwards and forwards, left and right all the time. You've got to, at some point make the move over into the opposition's territory. But all in all, if we come away with a draw, I think people would have been happy. I thought we would win 2-1 anyway. And if Garnacho's goal had stood, I think we would have won the game 2-1. We didn't. We lost 3-1. And that's life, isn't it? You just got to kind of move on, really.
Yeah, I thought the game plan that he set out to play worked in the first half, to be honest. I thought we did well to stifle them and keep possession and then hope for that moment on the break. It went to plan, and then we just lacked, I don't know what the word is, but once we scored, we just lacked something. The ability to hold that lead for a few minutes or then get steady back in the game. it's a bit mentality was lacking a little bit.
That's the issue then when you play counter-attacking football, because you set up to play counter-attacking football, and then everybody switches off. Yeah, everyone switches off at some point. You've got to just rip up the fucking rule book at some point and get on with it. I talk a lot about going rogue in football matches and not listening to the gaffer all the time, because you're the one that's out there in the middle of the pitch. You're the one who can see what's going on. And if you can find a way of being able to disrupt the opposition without having to sit back and work on the counter-attack all the time, you do it, and you act upon that during the game. And then you take your bollocking off the gaffer at half time and full time. That's generally how it works. We just lack balls as a team. We've got nobody out there that's got fucking balls big enough to say, look, I know what's going on, I know what's happening, and let's go out there and do it.
I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to mention something later in the show, because it's something that I think's definitely an issue, more so than just one game, but maybe for the rest of the season. What about you, Barry? What did you make of the performance as a whole? Was you disappointed? We'll come on to the decisions afterwards. My gripe wasn't technically the decisions on the pitch; it was what we see afterwards. But we'll get onto that after. So, what did you think?
I mean, yeah, of course, I was disappointed. I mean, you never come away from a defeat as a football fan and go, "Oh, bloody brilliant! That was awesome." So you are always going to walk away from it feeling a little bit on the naff side. I think the depressing bit for us was just sort of when they scored their goals more than anything else. I think if they'd have scored 3 goals in first half, you'd all sit there and think, well, that's Arsenal. They pulled a madness. But to score 2 goals deep into extra time or injury time just sort of sticks in the craw a little bit. And then you realise that you could have had the lead through Garnacho as well. And, like you said, we'll talk about that in a bit. But, I think in that respect, I think sometimes a lot of what I like to call the Twitter overreaction is that, they do, Dan, and they all have a go and say how terrible it was.
I do it all the time.
I'm pretty
when I've
sure.
calmed down, I feel a bit better, but I definitely overreact to start with.
Well, exactly. But like 80 minutes when it's 1-1, everybody's sitting there and thinking this is a tight game. Nobody is watching that game at 1-1 going, this has been a pile of crap. Nobody's doing that. They're all sitting there invested in the scoreline. We're all sitting there thinking, if we can just nick a goal here, that'd be amazing. And if Garnacho's goal stands, nobody's sitting there saying we didn't play well. That's just not going to happen. And I think that's it. We just sort of put ourselves into a situation where we get ourselves obviously very upset. And I don't really subscribe to that sort of feeling. So, yeah, it's a bit crap when it is the best way I can put it. It was not nice to lose. But like you say, 6 points out of 4 games, it's not brilliant. But at the moment, it's not fatal. We've just got to move on to the next one, which I've checked. It's Saturday, not Sunday. So it's another 3:00 one. We're not used to these. We're used to playing on a Sunday. So, yeah, it'll be a good game. Brighton, they'll be tough. They're up there at the minute and playing well. But yeah, I think the Arsenal game, there was lots of positives to take out of it, as well as a lot of negatives as well. It's a typical early season performance, I would say.
So for me, and I'm definitely can admit I do this. I lose my shit for 10 minutes and then calm down a bit. And it's never as bad as it looked. But I can remember it at sort of 75, 80 minutes. I was screaming, like, why have we not made a sub? The legs have gone in midfield. We need to make a sub. It's going to cost us. Whether it's chucking on Gore, Hannibal, I don't care. Just get some fresh legs on. And it's a point I wanted to. It's something I've banged on for 6 months on this show in particular. It's a frustration with Ten Hag now for me that he's not prepared to. A tired Marcus Rashford is not better than a fully fit Pellistri. So why is he not taking Rashford off and put Pellistri on? Even Gore being on the bench and Hannibal. If Eriksen's legs are gone, and they were, why has he not made that sub to just freshen it up? But the thing that got me is Arteta's subs. So he was bringing on Tomiyasu. He was bringing on Vieira. He just was not bothered. He wanted fresh legs on. Nelson, I think, came on as well. And he didn't care who it was, what the thing was in the game. Martinelli was taken off, and I don't think he had a very good game. Arteta wasn't bothered about swinging the axe. Just took him off. So my question is, to do you think it's going to be a problem going forward? Because I think it's very clear that Ten Hag has 13, maybe 14 that he trusts, and then probably a group of 10 or 12 that he just does not trust anymore. And we've seen fans get on at Maguire and Evans for being on the pitch, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. One of the points is Evans was signed by Ten Hag. He wanted him, so he's come in. And we as a fan base, we're never going to get anywhere club-wise if we're hammering players that are on the bench because they're not good enough. And I think this is what's confusing me. There seems to be this rule that if you're not good enough to start for Man United, you're not good enough to be on the bench. And then if you haven't got anybody on the bench that's good enough to start, you've got a wide gap between starting players and everybody else. Like, when you look at Arsenal, they just made changes and they didn't care. So do you think that this is going to be a problem for Ten Hag if he doesn't get the group together, reintegrate McTominay, reintegrate Maguire? I think he's left Donny completely out of the Champions League squad as well. So it looks like he definitely won't be integrated back into the team. But it's just, do you think it's going to be a problem if we can't solve that one issue going forward?
Well, he's got no choice. He's got to sort it. He has no choice now. We don't know what's happening with Martinez. We don't know what's happening with Lindelof. So currently, right now, when you look at his favourites, Anthony at the minute must be suspended. He has to be suspended. In my humble opinion, I don't care whether you can go down as innocent to proven guilty or you like. It's a single opinion. I don't hold that as an awful United pundit. I hold it as my singular opinion. So he can't start so that's number one out of the way. Martinez potentially has aggravated his injury that he did at the end of last season. Lindelof
hasn't Martinez already been subbed once as well this season for the same thing?
Yeah, he has. Lindelof potentially. I think he kitted up for Sweden, didn't he?
He did
this week. So Lindelof potentially is going to be okay. But he's going to have to trust in Maguire. He's going to have to trust in Evans. He's going to have to trust in Palestri. He's going to have to trust in these players. The thing about football is you need squad players. Now, my vets team are very, very similar. They trust 8 of us all the time. Whatever. I could have one leg and walk out there and still play because the gaffer trusts us. And it's not anything to do with elevation of standard. It's to do with personality. I'm going to stick Stu in there with one leg and one fucking arm, and the left winger still ain't getting past him, or the centre forward's going to have a fight because he's going to fight him. And it's all about, football is as much about personality as it is skill, as it is being adaptable on the pitch. It's about your personality. If I throw you out there, are you going to melt and wilt in the sun? Or if I throw you out there, are you going to be an absolute block of ice that refuses to melt? And that's what you need. You need somebody out there in 100-degree temperature as a block of ice refusing to melt. And we haven't got that across the pitch. And that's his issue. People will say, Bruno's this great leader. Really? I don't think he is. I don't think he's a great leader. I never thought Maguire was a great leader. I don't think Onana's a great leader. We don't have any fucking leaders. Casemiro, really, but I don't think he's a great leader. So you've got to look at our squad, and he's looking at the squad and think, well, temperament-wise, we've got a real issue here, and I don't know how to change that, because how can you change a grown man's temperament? You can't. So I've got to go with the guys that I think can win us football matches, and that are maybe players that are slightly more talented, not adaptable, but slightly more talented than players that we put onto the pitch. And therein lies your danger of squad rotation. Therein lies your danger of almost a manager with blinkers, because he's not prepared to see. And I said this again, I'm like a broken record. People talk about, it's coaching this, or it's all rubbish. It's all rubbish. You can't. improve a footballer, everything that a footballer does, it's really all about himself, all about him wanting to wake up in the morning and being the best that he possibly can be that day. And we don't have enough of that. We don't have enough of these players that wake up in the morning and say, right, I'm going to be the very, 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 very best I can be. The very best I can be. And because when I'm on my game, nobody's better than me. We don't have that mentality, that sheer belief in the individual players. And Ten Hag doesn't have that sheer belief in these players. And that's a big issue. But he wanted, at this 25-man squad, he's still got 7, 8, 9 players there that he didn't want because our club is so poorly run. He should have got Donny van der Beek. He should have got Scott McTominay, Harry Maguire. He should have got the players he doesn't want and say, look, guys, fuck off. Just go. I don't want you here. Go. I'm going to instruct the board. You're gone. You're gone. That's it. I want you out because I need to, replenish this team. But, you can't do that with modern day football because agents start crying. Players cry to agents. Agents start crying. Girlfriend, I don't want to move. I like it here. And all this kind of stuff. Back in the 80s and the 90s, right, you're moving. What? I've sold you. Off you go. We've accepted a bid. You're going. The West Ham bid we've accepted. You're going, Harry. You're gone. But nowadays, you can't. And we've allowed this. We've allowed this to happen. Football's allowed this to happen. Money has allowed this to happen. I don't care whether you agree or disagree that earning 350 grand a week is okay. It's at the going rate. It isn't the market rate, but football and money has made players into weak individuals, namby-pamby girls, because the club does everything for them. If you want a plug changed, phone the club. You want a massage, phone the club. If you want to go shopping, phone the club.
You call them namby-pamby girls. The girls' football team at the moment is far more exciting to watch than the men's football team at the minute. And they behave a lot better. So, I wouldn't even come close to comparing them to the girls because, frankly, they're an embarrassment compared to them.
Well, that's because, women footballers today and for of all of time have had to fight for the right to be called professional footballers. So they know what it means to get there. Half our players are completely forgot. They've completely forgotten what the love of football was, what got them up at 6 o'clock in the morning to kick around before they went to school. Every break time, every lunchtime, can't wait to get home. What time's team on? Oh, I'm just going outside with the ball. They've forgotten all this because they're given 200 grand a week contracts, 300 grand a week contracts. A smart footballer today at 18, if he's sensible, could retire after 1 year of his contract and just walk away. He could retire if he was sensible with his money after 1 year in the Premier League. That's so wrong. And so why would you give your very, very, very best if you can retire within 1 year?
It comes on to a point I was going to make. So we was linked a few years ago with John McGinn, and
yes,
it was ridiculed in the press. It was absolutely ridiculed. Twitter police was out in force. Couldn't believe it, and I was all for it because he's a proper professional. Turns up every day, puts in the hard yards. Didn't care about the spotlight. Didn't want 200 grand a week. Would have come and donned the shirt for 50 and been happy with it. Do you know what I mean? And that's the sort of player we need. We need a player like that that's not bothered about the wages. This is why I'm so looking. Well, this is why Amrabat's one of the better signings for me because it seems like he's gone. I want to play for Man United, and I don't care wages, don't care structure, don't care. Just get me to the team. I want to play in that team, and that's what we need more of. So, what about you, Barry? Do you think that if Ten Hag sort of can't? I agree with what Stu says in the sense of he's got no choice, but he did this last year. So it's for me, it's a little bit of a reoccurring theme. It looks very much that he's going to run the same 13 or 14 into the floor and then only make the changes when they're absolutely necessary or injuries force them. And I don't see how that works. You look back at the history. Well, look at Klopp's brief time at Liverpool, for example. Some of their biggest moments in Klopp's time there have come where the best players weren't available, and they was relying on Divock Origi to get them through against Barcelona, for example. And they did it because the players felt like they was part of a squad. I would say, and we'll come on to this, obviously, we'll move on to the Sancho bit after. I would say there's a few players in the squad or in the team currently that could quite easily go to Ten Hag and say, so no matter how bad this certain player plays, no matter how bad his form is or how bad the start's been, performance, etc., he's always going to start in front of me. So why am I still here? And I'm not talking about your Maguires or your McTominays, but other players like Pellistri would be a fine example of this. Hannibal looked like he was going on loan. He was told not to. We had that last year with Zidane Iqbal. He was told not to go on loan, stay at the club. Didn't play a minute of any game after he stayed. We refused to let the Icelandic lad, is it Hansel, go to the Under-19s World Cup, and then he didn't play a minute of pre-season. What do you think? Do you think that it could be an issue?
I mean, I think first of all, every name you just mentioned there is quite young, and so we have hit a point where football as it stands just feels to me to be entirely just screwed up. It's exactly what Titus just said. I think we all just miss the old days, the days when football was football. You could just switch on and enjoy it, have a go at the referee because they've made a dodgy decision, have a laugh and a joke, banter with the people in the opposite team. And nowadays, everything's so analytical, even to this point. Even us here, sat here on our little podcasts and our little rooms, having our conversations about it. It's exactly the same thing. Everybody is an analyst now. Everybody is pushing their thoughts out there to a much wider group of people. It used to be you just have a chat with your mates down the pub. Now all of a sudden, Twitter is your mates at the pub, and you throw it out there, and people from all across the world are hearing what it is you've got to say. And I think that has its positives and it has its negatives. The negative for me is what it's currently doing to football at this level. I mean, it's really quite hard to watch sometimes because you just know, depending on how a certain result goes, it's also reactive after just one game. And it's absolutely mad. I mean, it really does wind me up, the level of anger there is towards Harry Maguire. I've made no secret of that before. I think it's really quite petty. And it comes from people who just seem to want to be right. And that every time they see a mistake, they feel like that proves that they're right. They won't look at a clearance and go, oh my God, that was a really good clearance. They won't do that. They'll ignore that until they see the moment that ball slips through his leg or under his foot, and then they'll have a go. And I think we're in the same situation, though, with the coaches. I mean, Stu said coaches don't teach them anything. I think the thing that coaches need to do is they need to prepare them mentally. They need to get them to their optimum level in that respect. And that can be achieved in many different ways. It can be achieved through the way in which they do their training. It could be the way in which they handle their one-to-ones. There's so many different ways in which you have to conduct yourself to try and keep a squad of people happy. And anyone who's ever managed a group of people that is more than just two or three absolutely knows that can always be a very tricky thing to do. It happens everywhere you go. You go to any water cooler across the country, there is going to be somebody stood there going, oh, he loves that person over there. They get away with everything. Doesn't matter what I do, that person gets away with everything. He comes in 10 minutes later. If he wants time off, he gets it. I ask for it. I've got to run through all these hoops. It happens everywhere, Dan. It doesn't matter where you go, whether it's a football pitch or whether it's down at your local Sainsbury's. Other supermarkets are available. It doesn't matter where you go, you're going to get it. And it's just amplified for the very reason that Stu's mentioned, money. Money has caused everything that we wanted. It was brilliant back in the early 90s when the Premier League started and we started seeing this injection of cash into the game that saw Sky Sports taking it over and putting out this really good footballing package. It's not the case anymore. It's got too much. It's absolutely crazy that people can be sold for £100 million. Why £100 million? That is an absolute eye-watering amount of money, and that's what we're selling people for. Not us at Man United, of course, because we don't appear able to sell anyone for more than 50p in a Mars bar. But it's just frustrating to watch the whole of football, and I don't blame Ten Hag or Mark Skinner, in fact, for the women's team, for sticking with the people that produce good results. And I've always said that if the results are good and we're doing all right, stick with the team. I don't think you've got an argument. These first 4 games, I feel like you've got more of a point because it has been a much trickier set of results and a much trickier set of performances. I see a lot of people saying there's no pattern of play, that we're not seeing the sort of way, the Man United way, so to speak. I think the Man United way has always just been to try and score more goals than the opposition, no matter how it is you choose to play. That's literally it. If they score 3, we'll score 4. If they don't score any, well, then hopefully we'll nick 1. I can remember a brilliant game that happened. I'm sure it was like Sunderland or Stoke. They played in red and white stripes, and we battered them. We absolutely battered them. I'm sure it was Stoke for 95 minutes, and it was the 96th minute where we finally scored. So I don't know is the honest answer, Dan. But truthfully, I feel that at the moment it's too easy after a game. You've got 7 days of social media perhaps to be navigating through with people throwing different opinions and different pictures. Just look at what's happened with Harry Maguire today. There'll be people slating him. There'll be people saying he did all right and it was somebody else to go for. And whichever way you look at that, there's going to be and you'll go with it. Some people will just go with the win. They'll go, oh, that's true. Yeah. Oh, actually, so's that. And they don't really know where to land. I'm one of those that just says at the end of the day, Erik ten Hag will be judged and he will live and die by the decisions that he makes. And if he chooses to put that team out, well, then that's on him. And he's then got to try and keep everybody happy. I don't think that's possible if you're not playing football. You can't keep them happy. But equally, I'd also argue, as Stu was alluding to, he says just get them out. And absolutely, you hear the Brian Clough stories of how he used to deal with people. It very much was a case of if he said you were gone, you were gone. You can't do that nowadays for the reasons Stu said, for the money. Like, if I'm Harry Maguire and I'm being told I've got to go to West Ham, I'm absolutely not accepting to go there without getting the remaining money that you've promised me that's on my contract. For that very reason, regardless of whether he's already a millionaire, regardless of how well he's been, that's the money that this club said they were going to give him. That's not Harry Maguire's problem. That's not Erik ten Hag's problem. That's the people that run the club. If you're going to make that decision to give these poxy contracts out to people with ridiculous numbers on them that just shouldn't be really seen, it's no surprise to me that they then decide not to go. So for me, I do want to see more people given a chance, but I'm talking people like Scott McTominay. Højlund is a top goal scorer for Euro 24 at the moment, along with
Scott McTominay.
Yeah. And he can't get a look in. He cannot get a look in, despite the fact that we're sitting there with people saying Mount can't play, who's going to go in there at the back to allow the freedom to go forward. The answer is simple. Scott McTominay. He is a British lad who's got his head in the game. He knows what it takes. He's not paid extortionate amounts of money, and he wants to prove himself. And he always does. But again, people will jump on him because he makes the occasional mistake, which, let me tell you, every footballer
Everybody does. Yeah.
You watch a game for 90 minutes and show me a footballer that doesn't make a mistake. I'll show you a footballer that was sat on his backside for the whole game.
It's funny you should say that because Maguire's, I've got Twitter up just at the side of me. So Maguire's not long since tweeted, of course, we wanted more, but it's an important point towards qualification. Thanks for your support. See you Tuesday. And you should see the comment section underneath. It's disgusting. I don't know how, as a person, he's not broken yet with the abuse that he gets. I know he probably doesn't see it as much as maybe we see it, but it's baffling. On the McTominay thing, what I find interesting is he's played under a few managers now, and he just can't seem to get a run in the team where he wants to play. And I find it confusing because he seems to do all right for Scotland in the further forward positions, but then gets lumped into midfield. And one of the problems I've had this week is because I tend to overreact straight after the full-time whistle, which every week it'll always happen. I don't know why. Just one of them things. Everybody thinks that I'm Ten Hag out, and I'm not. I really want him to work for him at the club. And it's my criticism isn't from a place of, I think he needs to be sacked. It's from a place of, I think if this carries on, that's inevitably what's going to happen because the same 12 or 13 is not going to. We're not going to challenge for the trophies we need to be challenging for, no matter how many years you give it. If you're only playing with 12 and 13, Klopp won the title because he had a squad. Pep wins the title every year because he can make unlimited rotation, and it doesn't really matter. It's harder to put Pep in the same category as the other managers because he's got 3 world-class players for most positions, so it's quite easy to rotate. And this is the frustrating thing for me. I can see it from Ten Hag's point of view because the same way as I'm criticising him for leaving Rashford on, I can only imagine the uproar if he takes Rashford off for Pellistri and Pellistri's at fault for a goal that gets conceded. He'd get absolutely battered for taking Rashford off and putting Pellistri on. He'd be blaming him.
Yeah, but you can't. You as an elite manager, you can't worry about that.
But it's a tough situation, isn't it? It's the same as like giving Dangor a chance and Hannibal a chance.
It is a tough situation, but you've got to just stick your 2 fingers up to the fan base. You have to stick. You know, sometimes you've got to say. Sometimes you've got to say to the fan base, shut up. Let me get on with it. Because if you keep changing managers, then, and we talk about, we want stability in this club, we want stability at the top, we want stability all the way through. You cannot keep changing managers.
No, we can't be Chelsea.
You've got to allow somebody 5 years to develop what he wants to develop, and you've got to back him. We don't know what's happening with the Glazers. I mean, I still think the takeover will happen. I really do. And I think it'll be done next month or maybe November. I really do believe it will happen. But if it doesn't, there's still no point having a go. I mean, I've look, over the last couple of weeks, right, I've seen, people calling for Ten Hag's head. Well, what is, I mean, this is the problem with managers, with football, with their fans that have grown up in the Sir Alex Ferguson era, and all they've seen is winning. You need to kind of look at the history of the club, look at our trajectory. We go through patches of real success and patches of real dour football and patches of mediocrity, and we're in this mediocrity at the moment, and it happens with football. Liverpool did it. City were absolutely nowhere up until the Sheikh Mansour came in. They were nowhere, and so City will pick up new fans, new style fans. If new style fans are coming to United because they want what City's achieving, forget it. Just go and support City because it's not going to work for us. If you've actually got a love for the club and an understanding of the club and a deep understanding of football as well, you'll see it just doesn't work like that. So, and I go back to it again, our problem is attitude. It is attitude. Nobody is suggesting that these guys aren't, elite football players. They are. You don't get to Manchester United if you're not this type level of player. They are elite footballers, but their attitude isn't elite. Their mentality isn't elite. It's kind of like Fergie always used to have this siege mentality. Ten Hag needs to do something very, very similar. He needs to rally around. He needs to get his squad together. Forget what's going on. I want you off. Fergie would have banned players off Twitter when it gets like this. He would have banned Maguire. You're off Twitter, mate. You're gone. You're off Twitter. I got a hamstring injury. You change your car. I like that car. Tough. You change your car. This is what you've got to do with these. But instead, he's got an agent he's got to deal with, Ten Hag. Yeah. Oh, well, I was talking to Bruno the other day and you said something you didn't quite like would upset him. Oh, what? Oh, fuck off. Just fuck off. Shut the door behind you, mate, because I'm not dealing with you. And that's how it's got to be. You can't allow these morons, these agents. And I know a lot of agents doing what I do through the media. I know a lot of agents. I know they work. And it's the slightest little thing. The slightest little thing that upsets their player that they go into the manager and they start moaning and whinging. Honestly, football is a real cesspit of greed. It's and players who just aren't. They just aren't there anymore. There's no steel. There's no backbone with these footballers because they go home and they go home to their 10-bedroom mansions or whatever, and then they've got people hanging around their gates. They want autographs. They're giving shin pads out. They're holding signs. Can I have your shirt, please? They go out shopping. They're bumping into fans. Oh, can I have my picture taken with you and all this? And they're surrounded by people who are telling them they're great instead of somebody pushing them against the wall and saying, listen here, fella, I'm paying 800 quid a year to come and watch you through a season ticket. You're not performing. You're just bothered about this, and this, about what Gucci handbag I can buy, what this and what that. You're not bothered about what's happening on the football because it doesn't affect you like it affects us. So I'm kind of fed up, really, with football. I've got to that stage where I'm fed up with football. And that's really
the men's
bad,
team in particular at the minute, from floor to ceiling, is an absolute mess.
I'm fed up with them. I mean, why the Glazers? You see stuff about the Glazers wanting 10 billion quid or whatever. I don't actually believe that. But it might have been worth 10 billion quid if they actually ran the club properly.
Yeah.
You might be able to get 10 billion quid now if they'd run the club properly. But they haven't. And, you're just crawling up a block of ice constantly. Every time you wake up as a fan, you're crawling up a block of ice and you're slipping back. There's a manager who's doing it. The whole club as a whole, that people are just desperately trying to get some grip, and you can't get grip. And I don't know what the 1958 have changed the way that they go about things now, and I fully support their agenda and I fully support how they're going about it. And people have really got to start looking at how we can really start pushing the agenda, like the 1958 are doing, and other organisations. I'm not talking about the big YouTube channels because they're just sensationalists, but I'm talking about genuine fans, people who really love football and the club. But right now, I'm just fed up with both. I really am.
Do you know what really, really annoys me? It's that there's these big fan channels that could make quite a big difference. But because it's all clickbait and for clout, they're not really that interesting. It's so annoying. Because basically, if the clickbaiting right, they're not really that interesting. But they could make a massive difference in terms of getting protests together and
this
stuff
is
like
exactly
that.
it. This is the problem just in the world at the moment with how football is. I mean, Stu's right when he's talking about goals and that sort of thing. There's no goals for these people anymore. Everything is instantly available. It's the same for us. You want an answer to a question, you just go on the internet. More often than not, you're going to find it. It's there, within seconds. And even though that exists, there's still people out there that will go and ask a question of someone rather than just type it into Google. They'll often do that. When did Man United win the FA Cup last? You could type that into Google. You could ask Alexa. Sorry for whoever I've just set off there. But even though you could ask all of those potential things, they don't. They go and ask other people because they're lazy. They want other people to bring it to them. And this is the level of football that we've got now. There was a brilliant Brian Clough story. It was one of the goalkeepers. I can't remember who it was. But he was saying how he'd really wanted a new car. And basically, Brian Clough had said, you can't have one. That's it. And he has a big one. Sorry?
It was Mark Crossley.
Mark Crossley, that was the one. And he ends up going to his house and signs the contract. There's nothing on it. He just says, sign that bit of paper. He signs it. And when he finally gets in and comes in the next day, he's got his contract. And within it was a set of car keys for his, it was Brian Clough's daughter's car. Didn't want it. So he's given it to him. And that was something they had to work for. But that came through trust and that relationship with the manager. They don't have it now. They don't need it. Because they're going to get 250 grand at the end of the week or the end of the month, whichever way it is. Either way, it's obscene. And then they get their money and they can go and buy that car if they want to. Nobody's telling them no. Could you imagine nowadays trying to tell a footballer, no, you can't have a new car? It wouldn't happen. It wouldn't fly because you don't have the right to do that anymore. And, it's the same. I put it all back, and this might be the moment that I get cancelled off of this channel. With what I'm about to say, or that he knows nothing about football, but I'm going to go with it. I genuinely believe that the belief that's going on around the club at the moment, with the way the fans are, can be traced back to that first season without Fergie. You think about how Fergie was and how it took 3, 4, 5 years really before he really started to see the offshoots of what he was trying to implement. We gave David Moyes a 7-year contract. A 7-year contract. And in the mind of any sane person, what they're thinking there is, this is a project. This isn't something I've got to walk in and immediately get. I've got the project now to set this up and try and take it to the next level and do the impossible, which is to actually do a job that this guy has done ridiculously well for the best part of 2.5 decades. And instead, he didn't even finish one whole year. He was gone within months. They got him off before the end of the season, and then they brought in to see the end of the season out. And that, for me, is when everything went wrong for this football club. Not because necessarily David Moyes would have been the biggest, best success that Man United have ever had, even though you look at what he's done with West Ham and other clubs, even Everton, and see how well he did. What we did was we created a culture of, if we haven't succeeded immediately, well, then let's get rid of the manager. And that is now
a good point.
For a single manager.
But that's our board, though, Baz. And this is a very, very small thing. And I know it's a small thing. And, you know, most people watching this will say, oh, it matters not. But it does. You know, Chevrolet sponsored our shirts for a number of years. We all hated the logo. But the players should have been ordered to drive to training in Chevrolet vehicles. That would have been part of the deal, but they don't. They drive in what they want. But they should have been ordered. You drive a Chevrolet vehicle. That's it. When you're not wearing Manchester United shirt and you're seen out and about, you wear Paul Smith, because Paul Smith are our tailors. You know, stuff like this. Because what it actually does, it's discipline. It invokes discipline in you as an individual. Right, I'm contracted to do this, so I must do it. F1 drivers hate it, don't they? But they have to go out and they've got to do things for sponsors, going riding helicopters or whatever, and they do it for sponsors. They've got to. And it's exactly the same with footballers. It instills discipline. You know, here's your keys to your car. What is it? Chevrolet. Don't like it. Tough. That's what you're driving. Tough. Don't care what you say. That's what you're driving. When you come into work and you go out of work, when you're pictured coming into Carrington and out of Carrington, going to Old Trafford and out of Old Trafford, you are driving that. The end. I don't give a damn. But again, they won't do it. They won't do it. I saw.
What a world! You wouldn't get in a Chevrolet and drive it. If somebody said to me, "Here's some car keys, drive that Chevrolet to work,"
yeah, but it's not becoming of a Premier League footballer, is it? It's got to be.
When you've got 5 Lamborghinis, it's not.
It's got to be a Cullinan or stuff like that. But that isn't the point. It's discipline. Hold on. You work for Manchester United. You do what you're fucking told.
So I'm glad you use that word discipline, because it helps us sort of move on / just before we get to the Sancho situation. So a few of my friends have mentioned they think that Ten Hag comes across as quite the disciplinarian. Now, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing if that's the way he's coming across, because that's exactly what this entire team needs from his level downwards, which is more discipline. They need to really get back on the ball. It's just, has the club got the ability to keep the same disciplinary measures above him? I don't think they have. I think he's gone to them in the summer and said, I don't want X, Y, and Z. You need to move them on. And for whatever reason, we haven't. And it depends. Again, I don't believe 99% of the reporters that report stuff. I believe one, which is David Ornstein, because he only ever reports it when it's finished. Most of them are. Romano repeats the same stuff for 7 days, and then sometimes it's not even right. So I don't trust that. But if I'm Ten Hag and I'm saying I don't want Scott McTominay, and they say, well, we've had a £45 million offer, I don't care if we've got a replacement or not. Get him gone. If I have to replace him for you for 6 months, and so be it. If that's the case, that's the case. Just get me a squad of players that I want. I get it would take time, but I think we've slept on probably 3 or 4 players more that could have gone this window in particular.
You could. The word you use, though, is discipline. And the word discipline comes from the word disciple, which actually means student. And this is the interesting thing, because everybody looks at discipline as just being like the Roy Keane person who shouts and makes sure that people follow what you're saying. But to follow, as a disciple would do, and be a student, is to actually show a degree of humbleness, to be a bit more meek. And it's that ability to understand that you don't know everything and you are not the king of the world or any of that sort of thing. And I think that is where, the discipline is missing, because the players know. Look at how many we've got. We have been bang average for how long now? And every time it's the manager that gets their head on the chopping block. Man United are like the Henry VIII at the moment, because all of our managers just get their heads chopped off or divorced or all that sort of stuff, and the players just carry on regardless.
If it was up to me, I would still have Solskjaer in charge. I would go back and let him stay and back him and give him what he needs, because I think he's going in the right direction. But again, just a couple of wrong moves in the transfer market in a summer, and it sort of took down everything he had started to build in terms of the football was good, the players looked good, everybody seemed happy. It was just a breakdown somewhere. And again, it was just a quick, sharp reaction, a few bad results, and he's gone.
But again, even Ollie, bless him, lacked that discipline, didn't he? You know, if training starts at 10, you're late as of 1 minute past 9.
Yeah, I can remember the Rashford thing, and this was one of the conversations we had the other day about Ten Hag. Rashford was a minute late.
A minute late, you're late. Yeah. You're late as of 1 minute past 9. I actually expect you here at 8:30.
Yep.
Ready to go, so that at 9:45 you're changed, you're ready, and you're out on that. So you come in at 8:30, you can do what you want, but at 9:45 you're ready, your boots are on, and you're walking out onto that training pitch ready to go at 10 o'clock. That's how it is. And if you've got a mentality of 1, 2, 3, 4 players, then you've got youth that show it, and then you've got other players that will begin to do it. Apparently, Sancho late or bad attitude, you know, in and around the dressing room. Rashford was late, you know, he's been late before. Our ex number 11 had issues of being late, didn't he, and pissing about on England duty and stuff of that nature. They all do it. But if you lay the law down and say, right, this is what I want, yeah, I don't care about fining you, because fining is going to be an irrelevance. If I fine you 20 grand, what's that going to do? I mean, there's a famous story, right? A real famous story of a Liverpool player. It escapes me. But I think Dalglish was managing at the time, and he wanted a weekend off to go to a wedding or something. And Dalglish said, no, you've got to play need you there on the Saturday. And he said to him, what's the consequences of me not doing it? Oh, you'll be fined. Oh, what's the fine? 20 grand or whatever his salary was. So he dug out 20 grand. There you go, Gaffer. See you Monday. You know, and that's the problem. When you can do that, where you can just pop 20 grand on the table because there's your fine, you're off. There was another issue with the Ashley Cole incident and I know this because the doctor was a consultant here in Shropshire. So I know this to be true. When Ashley Cole shot the kid with the pellet gun, there was him, John Terry, and the lad that got shot. And Ashley goes, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" And John Terry says, "How much money have you got in your locker?" He says, "Oh, I haven't got any." So John Terry pulled out 40 grand out of his locker and gave it to the kid. And of course, his dad wanted more, etc., etc., etc. And that's how we got away. That's how we got away with it. That's why Ashley Cole didn't get done for, because it's money, 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 money. Money talks, money talks, money talks, money talks, money talks. And when money talks, you've got people telling you brilliant every day. You just pick up the phone or press a button when you need a plug changing or your tire changing or whatever. When everything is done for you, being laid out for you, what are you supposed to do? Why would you do anything? Rolling Stones have this all the time, don't they? Ronnie Wood, when he's on tour for 2 years, he gets out of his car and walks up to his front door and he stands there because he's waiting for somebody to open the door for him, and he can't understand why not. And this is I'm just using Ronnie Wood as an example. But this is the problem. The players, you see it all the time at Old Trafford when the players are walking in, that they're being cheered and all this kind of stuff, and they love it. They love all this adulation. They love it. But no, I don't know. I'm just fed up with it. I'm just absolutely fed up with football.
I feel like this is a perfect time to move on to Sancho, to be honest.
Oh God.
I feel like it's definitely where we're all at. So obviously, when the Sancho thing happened and leaked, I had not seen anything. I had just seen a few quotes on Twitter, this, that, and the other. And I was like, wow, I was shocked that Ten Hag had sort of said it, to be honest, because very much all last season, Ten Hag protected his players at all costs. De Gea, Maguire, whoever it was, he never really chucked them under the bus. He sort of said, no, I want them to stay. They're doing a good job, blah, blah, blah. And then given the chance, he's got rid or tried to get rid of most of them. So it was quite surprising to hear him say it. And I'll be honest, I took it straight away as, because of my opinion on the way he's with the team, where he's only got 12 or 13, maybe 14 that he relies on, and then everyone else is sort of just injury fodder that he can use when he needs them. I was sort of like, oh yeah, I get it. I get what Sancho say. Like, I get why he's hit back. And then someone, I think it's someone that had been on the show before, called Craig, had pointed out that Sancho's and Antony's minutes last season are so similar in terms of subs, appearances, starts, minutes themselves. It was all really similar. So Sancho's probably one of the lesser that can complain about what I'm talking about. And then someone else said maybe he wasn't having a dig at Ten Hag with his response, but more so what some of the guys were writing in the media. I personally think it's just, again, it's just my opinion, that this is Ten Hag sort of saying to Sancho, you are in your last chance saloon. If you don't book your ideas up now, bearing in mind how he let him have, was it 2-3 months off last season to recuperate, to get himself together, then you're basically done at the football club. I'm interested to know how you think he's going to handle it now going forward. Obviously, we'll mention the Antony situation. It very much looks to me that if any charges are put forward, he will be suspended instantly. So that's going to, I mean, rightly so, by the way, but that's going to cause another issue itself. But how do you think Ten Hag is going to deal with this situation? Because it shouldn't be done in the public like this. I saw the interview afterwards, more towards the night time after it all broke. And do you know, when you watch the interview, what Ten Hag says isn't even that bad. It was just sensationalized so quickly because of social media. It looked worse on there than it actually was. So how do you think he's going to deal with it now, moving forward?
It always is. It's always sensationalized because it's Man United. And
yeah,
everything we do is like magnified 10 times. Listen, Jadon Sancho, he's had 82 appearances for Man United, scoring 12 goals. So just to give you the rough idea of where he is in terms of appearances with other players, he's played the same amount of games as Juan Sebastian Veron managed in the entirety of his career with United. He's played one more game than Kieran Richardson has played in the entirety of his career at Man United, and one less than Gabby Ainsley. The question I would ask is, when you think about an impact of a player, would we say he's had an impact that is greater than, equal to, or less than those players? Well, it's not an impact greater than Gabby Ainsley. I thought he was a pretty good left back. I don't think he's had that level of impact.
I'll never forgive Ainsley, I'm afraid, Barry, because he tried to force Fergie to sell him to Liverpool. And I can remember it because at the time I thought, what is this man trying to do?
Well, you'll have to get over that one, I'm afraid. Juan Sebastian Veron never really made it in a United shirt. He had, and I think Veron is probably the one out of all of those three that would be the best one to sort of level at Jadon Sancho, because Veron came with all the plaudits. He was a superb player for Argentina. We thought he was going to come in and be the next big thing at Manchester United, and he just didn't. He couldn't get the Premier League under his spell as he could do in so many other leagues. Here, Jadon Sancho is the same thing. I saw that Ryan Giggs has been on an interview saying that he just didn't kick on, and he hasn't. That's the truth. He hasn't kicked on. But you do have to ask, is that because of A, the way he's been asked to play, B, where he's playing, C, is it the tactics? Is it that he's been asked to do things differently? Let's not forget, right, Andre Onana has turned up, and I kept on being told this guy was going to be at the halfway line most of the time. I've barely seen him off his line for the last couple of games. So I don't want people to just sit there and think that these coaches at United aren't trying to instill their ideas and opinions and forcing people to play in a way that may not necessarily be their natural game. And that's the tricky bit, because ultimately you want people to play their natural game and excel at football. You don't want them to have to be so worried about what's going on around them in a particular way of playing. And that's why when you build your team, it's got to be so good. That's why Fergie was brilliant, because he already knew what his setup was. He already knew how he was going to play. All he needed was characters with the right mentality and the right ability to come in there and do the job that he wanted them to do. And he would put the player to that position. Like, Jadon Sancho isn't somebody that Ten Hag knew that well. He's not he's not a Ten Hag signing. He's a Solskjaer signing. So in that respect, Eric's got every right to say this isn't a player that I really want because it was never a player that I asked for in the first place. So there's always that. But I do feel for Jadon Sancho. I don't think any player should be called out by their manager at the start of a season when you consider how you look at Martial. He virtually, he waxes lyrical about Martial and how good he can be, despite the fact that he's probably the best person at A&E, without doubt. And that's about as good as it gets for Martial. So, I think as far as Sancho goes, no, he hasn't pulled up any trees. He hasn't done what he could have. But I do think we have to also take a moment there to realise that being called out publicly by your manager isn't good. Should he have responded the way he did? Probably not. It's not going to do any favours. And it may well spell the end of Sancho. But moving on to your second part of the question with Anthony, the guy's got to go. He's got to be suspended. I think it doesn't... Whatever it is that you're being accused of in that respect, in any job again, you would more often than not be taken out of that situation and given the ability to focus on your defence. And if you look at it from that way, is Anthony really going to have his head entirely in the game all the time? Are the opposition fans going to be using that to try and get into his mind? And it's pointless saying that people wouldn't think of doing that because, we're talking about fans here that will happily take the mickey out of, the Munich air disaster or Hillsborough or all of these other things. So let's not pretend that the stands are an unforgiving place at times either. So, I think for his sanity, for his defence, he needs the ability to go away and do that. So he should be. But also because of the message it sends. At the end of the day, if you've been accused of something as serious as domestic assault, especially after everything that's just happened with the number 11, Mason Greenwood, it's mad. It's absolutely mad that we're not going to be in a situation where we don't take that stance that we did with him. The difference being, obviously, with Greenwood, everything was out there for people to see and hear, and that's not necessarily the case here with Anthony. But 100%, I think he needs to be suspended. Maybe suspended is the wrong word. Maybe it's gardening leave, but he needs to be released to have that ability to go and deal with the issues that he's got one way or the other. And that would open up a spot for Sancho to have a go. But would Ten Hag play him? I'm not convinced he would.
No, yeah. I think for me, with the Anthony thing, the only reason I find it difficult is you look at the party situation last season, which was just as well documented as the Greenwood situation. And Arsenal played him to the end of the season, and then now they've kept him because the charges never came. And then I think Gylfi Sigurdsson was another situation. He's was accused. He disappeared from England. We've not seen him since. I don't even think he's resumed playing football. Turns out he hasn't been charged either. That's been left. And it's one of them. It's these sort of things don't get solved overnight. So if you're going to take him out the equation, you probably take him out of the equation for 2 years. It's not just a few weeks while it's resolved. It's a good chunk of time. So I think that's
it's his own fault though.
Yeah, no, whether it's right or wrong, I think that's why the club's going to wait as soon as an official charge is made. Because I think that's what happened with Greenwood. As soon as Greenwood was charged, the club suspended him.
He won't play Saturday. No chance. He won't.
No, I don't think he's. I think Barry's right. I don't think he's going to be mentally going to be in the right place to play anyway. If you're an opposition player, you're going to use that to your advantage, or the crowd, or a thingy. He definitely needs taking out the firing line, in my opinion. I just think the club will wait. They'll wait until an official charge, and they'll do sort of what they did with Greenwood. They won't make a statement on it until it happens, and then you'll get a statement saying he's been suspended if it happens. Depending.
Well, I would look at the laws in Brazil. I don't know enough about the laws in Brazil, but my understanding is you don't accuse anyone without foundation.
Well, from what I was reading, one of the reasons he's been dropped from the Brazilian squad is because if he goes over there, or in a certain capacity, he can be arrested and kept.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean. So
innocent until proven guilty stuff. You're just held.
No, and she's filed these charges in Brazil. Don't forget.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying that I don't know enough about Brazilian law, but I think they're not as lenient as we can possibly be in the UK. Just touching on Sancho, it probably won't surprise you guys, but I completely disagree. He should be called out. Any footballer on the planet should be called out. You want to If you want the adulation, you want to be famous, you want all of this, take it, because it works fucking both ways.
Yeah.
It works both ways. And Jarvis is absolutely right. My good old mate Jarvis is absolutely right. He's too fucking immature to grow up and start actually taking responsibility for his own actions.
Well,
when he was at Dortmund,
quote.
He wasn't earning anywhere near the amount of money he's earning at Manchester United, nowhere near it. So he had to play, he had to keep playing, had to keep generating interest, generating his talent. And he gets his move to United. We give him stupid money.
He's
and
made it.
And he's made it. So, you know, and he'll post all these pictures of children going up to him and giving him shin pads and saying, oh, that's absolutely brilliant. This kid was decided to make you shin pads. Go and make him proud. Go make the child proud. But he's not. He's got nothing about him. Look, if the guy's got demons, he's got issues going on. I believe he lost a very, very close friend last year. Fine, I get all of that. But have the balls then to cancel your contract and take yourself out of it. But he won't take it, cancel his contract, because he keeps getting paid. We keep getting paid, keeps getting paid, irrespective of what happens. If you don't want to get called out by the manager, and this applies to absolutely anybody, do what you're supposed to do. Do what you're supposed to do. And if you can't adapt or you can't play in the system that Ten Hag wants you to play, have the balls to go and tell him and say, right, where can you fit me in? What do I need to do to adapt to your system? Because that's what an elite professional footballer who's got, you know, something about themselves would do. And I've said this before, and I keep saying it, you know, there is so much information out there for a footballer. You know, if Sancho's playing whoever it is at left back at the weekend, know everything you need to know about that left back. Know how many touches he takes a game with his right foot. Does he chest the ball? Does he head the ball? Can he head the ball? Is he quick over 10 yards, or do I need to beat him over 20 yards? You know, is it better for me to cut inside, or do I need to go around? Where's he weakest? How can I turn him? Everything you need to know about your opponent, that one direct opponent, you should know before you step over that white line. And once you do, that's how it goes. That gives you then, if you are beaten on that day, you may be beaten by the better man. But if you don't prepare and you don't understand who you're going against, what you're going against, then you know, to me, to go and do something else, because you're not cut out to be a footballer at Manchester United. So some of the guys say, somebody lives in Brazil, which is great. So.
Yes, Stu, I mean, Stu, you were talking there about the calling out, and I think I saw a brilliant thing from Fergie when Aberdeen were winning a trophy. That was on social media today, and he literally rips into his team, like literally rips into them, and just goes, "We were lucky. There are only 2 players that actually played the game today. The rest of us are lucky. They're not the standards."
Yeah, I've seen the interview. Yeah,
seen the interview, and I get that, and Fergie was that sort of person. But do you feel that nowadays, with football the way that it is, with mental health coming out more now than ever before, and that being used as a reason for a lot of the softening in language, do you think that that's the sort of thing where Ten Hag needs to be just doing that behind closed doors? Because the minute he does that out loud, the social media mob are going to be straight on it immediately. You've only got to look at it, even in here, you know, some people that I really like and respect are all like, yeah, Sancho's a washout, he's gone, he's out of there. And
Jennifer,
to a degree, it just sort of puts him then towards a Maguire sort of level anger. Is it not a case of that nowadays they do need to be called out 100%, but actually just do it away from the glare of the public?
Yeah,
and all.
It's not working with this guy. It isn't working with this guy, is it? You know, he's been here 3 years. Jarvis, I'm not 100% sure, mate. I think he could have removed himself, pal. I don't know, to be honest. But Jarvis knows this, because Jarvis was on a show with me, or was in the comments on a show about 3 years ago, and I said we don't need Sancho, and I went into my reasoning behind it, and I was told, oh, you don't know anything about football, you don't watch enough German football, blah 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 blah, and you know, it is what it is today. No, actually, Barry, look. Again, it comes back to these morons. They want the trappings and tribulations of fame. You know, globally, we go out and we have a name for famous people called celebrities. It's the biggest nonsense going in the world today is celebrities. It's an absolute nonsense. All they do is do a job of work, but just differently. People go and watch them. You know, that's all they do. They don't do anything different to what you do or what I do. They don't make a fucking difference. You know, like a farmer does, who's getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning to put milk on your table that morning, or to feed you, or to do this. It don't make a difference in your life. It's an irrelevance. You know, it doesn't make a difference to you whether you go to football or not. It doesn't change your life. They're not doing anything specifically brilliant for you except entertain you. Yes, we all need entertainment. I get all of that. I do. But the issue is, it's a problem when you allow these players to become bigger than what they think they are, bigger than the club. And if you've got nowhere else left to go with this kid, if there's nothing else left to do about to call him out publicly, you've got to call him out publicly. That's it. You have to do it.
I tend to agree with you, Stu, because
if you can't take it, then go and do something else. I get mental health. I do. I do. It's horrible. We don't know. I mean, any one of us could be suffering here with mental health, and none of us would know. Anyone in the chat, nobody would know unless they told us. But he has got to. Oh, sorry. He has got to pull his finger out of his arse and start playing for Manchester United, and start doing what he's supposed to be good at, which is playing football. And he's got a chance now, because I don't see Anthony playing the next few games. But anyway,
you're right. When you say that he's, it's not working for him, isn't that the case? You just don't play them. You just don't play them. You know, it can all be done in-house. Like, if there's one thing that Man United are great at, and you've only got to talk to the women's team about this one, is the fact that they will just keep information within their little bubble, and they're more than happy to do that, and they'll do that forever and a day, and keep us minions on the outside knowing absolutely nothing. So,
but why should he? Why should he? Why should he earn 350 grand a week and not play?
Well, he should.
He should be playing. He should
That's
be.
not a Sancho thing. That's a club thing.
He should be banging on the table on the floor.
If we look at a different
I don't
player
think he is.
particular,
I don't think he cares if he plays or not, actually.
If we look at Maguire in particular, in running in the same way, in the same sort of issues, Maguire has took his lumps, took it on the chin. He's been quiet. He's not really said anything to the public. He's basically been a model professional. That no matter whether you like him, you don't like him, he's not caused the club any issues. And I don't think he's sort of gone at Ten Hag in any way. For me, the reason that Sancho has been called out, and honestly, when you watch the interview, it's not that bad. He just sort of mentions that's why he's not there. You don't really call him out. He just sort of mentions, we had enough attacking power, so we left somebody out. It was Sancho because his training was under par according to the coaches, which Sancho actually agrees to in the message that he releases. He said, I respect the coaches' opinions, etc. But the frustrating thing for me is I was with Stu on this. When we signed Sancho, it was all red flags for me. It was too much money to pay. It was too much money to give him wages. It was one of them. Had he actually done anything to warrant the figures that we was talking about? I always go back to Ronaldo. We saw Ronaldo for 80 million and he won a Ballon d'Or. And we're paying on par for Sancho, who would had a season half decent in Germany. But I think the frustrating thing is, you look at Sancho's creative stats and stuff like that for Man United, it's right up there. When he plays, he creates some like 2.3 chances every 90 minutes. It's up there with some of the better players. And it's got to frustrate Ten Hag that it frustrates me. There's a player in there and he's just not coming to the table. And I genuinely think it is it's like a bad marriage. This is make or break what's happened now. They're either going to go away and they're going to come back as strong as ever, or we're not going to see Sancho again, and Pellistri might get a run out. But it's. I personally would have preferred them to keep it in house, but I can sort of see why it's happened.
If I was Ten Hag, by the way, I'd play him Saturday, Sancho. I'd say you've been chirping
go
off.
And prove me wrong.
Go and prove me wrong.
Yeah.
And he would, when I'm pushing out the team, Sancho would be my first name, not the goalkeeper, not defence. Sancho would be my first name.
I'll just say that. I mean, first of all, you were talking about Jarvis's point here on Anthony. Just to say that everything I've seen is that he was removed, certainly from his own interview. And when you read that, it certainly sounds like it was that he was removed. The translation makes it say that. It's not like he chose to do that. What I would say is like this. Like, this is what Mickey's put. Now, I know Mickey. Mickey's a great guy in the women's chat more often than not as well. And he's a good United fan. But the language that's being used, because Maguire is mature. And this is it. We don't teach these players anything anymore. You look at what it was like under Fergie. You know, Lee Sharp and Ryan Giggs went off to a party, and he turned up. And out of the two of them, Ryan Giggs decided, well, I just won't do that anymore because the football is more important to me. Lee Sharp didn't. And, you know, there's only one that has had more appearances and more medals than pretty much anybody else in English football. So, you know, you do have to take a moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's also done some pretty shady stuff as well. But the early part of the career was what I was looking at there. I don't think we do enough of that with our youngsters. We're not teaching them. There's too much going on in the modern day football. Take Man United out of it now, just in football in general. They get a ridiculous amount of money. There is so much that can be there for a pitfall. They expect everything to be there. Like you just said, opening the door. They feel like they've got the right to do anything. They are above the law. And that's why we're getting these problems with the likes of Anthony, with the likes of Greenwood, with the likes of...
My friend's lad, Baz, is 18 years old and he plays in Chelsea's under-23 squad. He's 18. Okay, he's on 12 grand a week. And they bought him a house. They bought him a 5-bedroomed house. He's on 12 grand a week and he's 18. He'll never have to work again if he was sensible with his money. Yeah. He'll never have to work again. He's a young lad and he's a cracking lad. Dylan Williams, his name. He's a really, really good lad. Left back, plays for Chelsea youth. He lives in London. He's been given a house by the club, signing on fee. He'll never have to work again if he played it right. Plus his match bonuses, his appearance fees, etc., etc., etc. And that's 18. Martin Odegaard, when he was 60, was earning 80 grand a week, wasn't he?
Real Madrid, yeah.
80 grand a week at 16.
And the parents got a big sum of money as well in a house.
But that kid has dusted himself off and is playing some of the best football of his career because he wants to play football.
It's desire and mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's a difference.
Yeah. Right, so we've ticked on really well. I wanted to talk about something a little bit lighter, but not lighter. So in the Arsenal game, there was a few, we'll say, debatable decisions. And this is frustrating as a Man United fan, to be honest, because, the fallout from these decisions seem to be totally different. If we was playing Wolves and Wolves had these decisions go against them, there'd be 7-day polls about it. They'd be ringing in, voting and calling the PGMOL cheaters and all this, that, and the other. Now, my issue isn't technically the decisions on the pitch, for example. So I'll start with the less of an issue one for me, which was the foul on Johnny Evans. Now, you can argue, was he strong enough? You can argue, was he fouled? You can argue everything. The one thing you can't argue, and it was actually argued on Sky, which was absolutely mind-blowing, an ex-referee said that if there was going to be a foul, it would have been Evans on Gabriel, which is just absolutely fucking ludicrous because he's clearly being held. So he swings him round because he's grabbing him. And then when he swings him round, he chucks him to the floor. So, I mean, you can give it, you could not give it. I personally think you've got to be a bit stronger in those situations, get out a bit quicker if you can. But
to be honest, I didn't think that was...
Well, yeah, no, I wouldn't have given it. But for the media then say that you should have given a penalty away. What? And then...
That's what the media does. They always look for the opposite.
It's absolutely baffling. And then I don't want to be that guy, but it makes it look like they know if they say that it could possibly be a foul or whatever, they'll get less clicks.
And Gabriel was physically blocking Johnny Evans from getting out to Declan Rice.
Yeah, he couldn't
and
get
that's obstruction. That's obstruction first and foremost. Okay, in football, that is obstruction. Secondly, Johnny Evans, if he'd gone like that, which he should have done, used his force to almost here on Gabriel's, just below Gabriel's neck, he would have been able to leverage him out the way. But leveraging him out the way there, he gives away a penalty. Okay, so what he should have done, and he didn't do because of the way that Gabriel was pushing him down, he should have grabbed his shirt to the right. So as you're looking at it, our left, our right, and pulled him down, and pulled Gabriel down, and then he might have been able to get away and get to Evans. But Gabriel was a foul, 100%, and the goal shouldn't have stood. It's as simple as that.
I think it could have gone it could have gone either way for me. But my point is that I can see it as two things. You can argue that it could go either way and it's not a foul, or you can argue that it's a foul.
Yeah.
You definitely can't argue that it should have been a penalty to Arsenal. And this is what baffled me so much about watching the thing afterwards. And then even the Højlund one, you can argue that it's a penalty, and you can argue. I agree. I think it's a penalty, and you can argue that the defender's being strong. They're two arguments you can put down. What you can't argue is that Højlund fouled Gabriel, which is what they said on Sky Sports.
No.
Yeah. And I'm just watching it what is going off here? Because he touches him on his arm because he's got his hand across his neck.
You've got to look at Højlund's right leg as he was falling into Gabriel, because Gabriel was physically pulling him back. So his right leg was
no attempt to play the ball, by the way.
Was off the ground. And there's only one reason for that, is the force of Gabriel on Højlund to lift your leg off the ground. Other than that, he's kind of what he should have been doing was going forward, because he's wrestling, and that was the problem. So that was a definite penalty.
Do you think that was a penalty too?
The Højlund one was definitely a penalty. I mean, the last time I saw a move like that was in the WWF when the Big Boss Man was about. That was his finish with the sidewalk slam. All he needed to do was actually get the feet off the ground, and that was it. It'd have had him for the 3 count. So that one was definitely a pen. I didn't think the Gabriel one at the other end with Johnny Evans was a penalty to them, nor was it a free kick. For me, my drama was Onana. I don't think he should have been beaten at the near post in the manner that he was. I think he got his hand to it. He could have
personally thought there was 3 players to if you take away I do think it's obstruction, and they could be given. I think, again, if we're talking about Man United versus, I don't know, Portsmouth in the FA Cup, and that happened to one of their players and we scored, there'd be no ends of polls about it. So I get that. But I do think Evans could have been out quicker. Maguire could have got across a little bit better or got out the way. And Onana, I think De Gea would have saved that because he's better at that sort of thing.
Actually, funny enough, I did say that as well. I thought De Gea would stop that.
He would have saved it, yeah. And then the last one, and this one for me, I don't get it, is the offside. So I went out for a drink with some Arsenal fans the day after, and we was having a talk about what Gabriel did to play him offside. And by the way, watching 4 lads in a pub try and act how to lean forward on your tippy toes and put your head behind your shoulder is the funniest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It is impossible. It is impossible for you to be on your tiptoes facing forward and get your head behind the point of your shoulder. So the VAR went from his shoulder, but in every picture, his head's got to be the furthest part forward. And I was saying, and they were all turning their head left. I was like, yeah, but his head's facing forward. So unless he's a turtle and he can just retract his neck, I don't understand. I think it was the wrong frame. The picture looked very much as if the ball would already been played, so it could have gone back a frame. And B, I don't think it went from the right point. It looked he was miles offside when they drew the lines, but he didn't look offside.
The thing about this, and you can be critical here of Garnacho, believe it or not.
He's run a little bit.
He should have done, because A, he was always going to beat Gabriel for pace, 100%, and B, he was looking, and he was doing the right thing, by the way. He was looking perfectly for the ball, 100%. And it was the right thing to do. So his body position was perfect. So he was ready to go, and he sprung. The Gabriel, actually, if you watch the video, he dove in the air like that, and he dove forward for whatever reason. I don't quite know why he did. And that's the bit that you've got to question the referees is, why did they get it wrong? Why did they get it wrong? Why did they not believe that was onside? Now, we've all seen different angles, varying degrees. Either it's Either it's one of those, or it's either given or it isn't. I think on this particular occasion, I think it was so tight that it should have, and they're supposed to be giving the attacker the benefit moving forward. I don't know why they didn't give it, and that for me is the frustrating thing. I played in loads of games like that, and getting offside it can be tricky at speed. It really can. But the interesting thing about Arsenal's defence was they were so far apart from Garnacho, but Gabriel was never going to get there in a million years. It just wasn't,
Yeah, we had opened them up quite well in the move, to be fair. It worked out quite well.
Yeah, it's just one of those.
I think this is an interesting point. So Mike Dean said the lines can't be wrong. Now, I'm going to call bullshit on this one because I watched the Leeds game last year where they put the line on the Leeds player's foot and took it as the defender's foot, and then it was onside instead of offside when it should have been offside instead of onside. And they literally put the line on the wrong person's toe. So because the legs were all like tangled on the replay, they'd done the line from the completely wrong place. So it's still possible to have a human error with VAR because it's a human that's putting the line down.
The thing is, though, it's not even just about the lines, is it? It's about, you're offside from the moment the ball has first contact with the foot, basically. Yeah, so that's the first thing. But the thing is, it happens at such speed that you've then got to try and work out that exact second. And you're talking like not things that you would see with the naked eye. And therein lies the issue. Like before VAR and before we had the offside stuff, that's what we used to do. We used to just look at it and you did have to go by the naked eye. And I think genuinely, if we hadn't have had VAR to call on and people had seen that, as you said, it looked offside eventually, they would have been less of an argument from people because they just accept, well, at the end of the day, it's, somebody on the side using their eyes to see what's going on. I think the problem that we got with technology is that now that technology arrives, everybody expects things to be perfect, whilst forgetting the fact that things weren't perfect beforehand and that it probably outweighs the bad more than it does the good. So we're getting more right decisions than we're getting wrong ones. Listen, the fact of the matter is the lines have got to get drawn somewhere. You can sit there and say it's got to be you can increase the thickness of the lines, but if the thickness of the lines is 10 centimeters, and he's 11 centimeters, well, he's really tight. Maybe we should make it 11 centimeters. And before you know it, you're just constantly making the lines bigger. So the problem, as ever, when it comes to talking about technology, isn't the technology, and it's not even always the people that are doing it. It's the way in which it's being utilized and how people are using it. Listen, you've only got to look at the moon landing to realise that, people are going to take a bit of film footage or video footage and they will interpret it whichever way they choose to, and they will find a way. So you can look at your angles, you can do all that. At the end of the day, it was offside. It's irrelevant. It's happened, it's given. You've just got to get on with it. What I don't like about it is that it is so tight. I think if you've got to sit there and get a magnifying glass out effectively for it, to me, that's where you're giving the benefit. That's where you go, this is too tight. It's going to take me a long time to draw the lines.
Do you think there should be a time limit?
Long to draw the lines, maybe we should just say that we stick with the on-field decision. And I think the on-field decision was onside.
I just think we just remove VAR out of the equation. Period, because it was brought in to make sure that teams earn the points that they're supposed to earn.
Yeah, it's for me. It should have been brought in for like Pedro Mendes when he scored against Roy Carroll and it was 5 foot over the line.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the sort of thing. The same with was it Aston Villa and Sheffield United, where the ball had gone in and the goal line technology didn't work. It should have been used for stuff like that. It shouldn't be for dissecting the game down to the very bones that it's designed for.
It just isn't working. Teams are still losing victories, losing points with VAR. It's been proven, so it's irrelevant. So it's almost become a waste of time, a non-entity, because it's not working for teams. It's not working. It's working against teams. So it's there's no benefit to VAR anymore. No benefit whatsoever.
Yeah, this is one of the frustrating things for me because I constantly hear big six bias and stuff like that, and I genuinely don't think it's that. I think it's just inept referees, and it's across the board. The bad decisions are just there to be seen. Listening to some of the VAR interactions for like the Onana thing, the Van Dijk sending off. Some of it's quite like, what are we listening to here? These people are running the game, and it's confusing. But at least you can understand the point if they if they partially explained it. I just think it's going to be a long season for every team. To be honest, I don't think the referees are up to standard.
It's just VAR. It's just rubbish, isn't it? We don't.
It is, yeah. Go back to the old days.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Well, it's been a good show. Yeah, we've done all right. An hour and 25 minutes. Not too bad. Fingers crossed I did a good job, Barry. Yeah. Maybe let me do it again.
Oh, you're absolutely fine, mate. You can have next week as well if you want.
Oh, yeah, I can do next week. Yeah, so I think we've covered everything we pretty much want to cover. Fingers crossed next week the discussion's a little bit more positives in terms of the performance. It's nice to see the lads doing well on international duty again. I had one quick question for you both. It was a question I was going to ask, and then I've seen it on Twitter from another channel, and it was a good question, and I thought of it earlier. And that is, since Fergie, who do you think's been the best signing for the club? One word answers.
Since Fergie.
Since he retired. Oh, put him on the spot here. I love it.
You could have done with knowing that at the beginning of the show. That was coming out. I could have come up with something a bit quicker.
No. On the spot.
I suppose, yeah, you would argue Bruno, I guess. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I suppose you'd argue Bruno. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd probably agree with that.
I don't think you can go for any others. I'm trying to think back, but actually, there's none that have had the impact that Bruno has. You know, his arrival coincided with us doing what we did and getting ourselves up to second. And so, yeah, I think, yeah, got to go with Bruno. Sir Bruno of Fernandes.
Yeah, I mean, Herrera's a good shout, by the way. Dave's right. Herrera's a good shout.
I had one of two players. I had Herrera and Fernandes, and it was actually, when I thought about the question, it was horrible because I was thinking back saying, you know, there's not as many players on that list, and there should be, if that makes sense. It should be a bigger list.
You put Danny Blind in there as well. I thought Blind was a good signing for us.
Yeah, Blind was a good signing. Oh, we've gone on to be better since he left as well. Right, we'll wrap up here because my dog is barking.
Yes, I've got to go.
Right. Thanks for the stream, everybody, and we'll see you later.
All the best.